okay with it? Do you want any additions or deletions to the agenda? Motion to approve.
So move.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Next up is the approval of the minutes. Maybe you all had a chance to look at that. The only thing I noticed was Tom's name wasn't in the list of attendees.
Attendees. Yeah.
That was corrected.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you.
I apologize.
No problem. Anything else? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Tom and Sam? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. All right, the only order of business that we have is discussion of the outdoor dining, downtown parking. And I believe Kevin sent us the results of the committee meeting. And Brian, you want to go over those?
We can. I wasn't sure exactly when the subcommittee met. It was last week. Last week. Out of that, Kevin drafted the guidance you have in front of you. And then Pete and Catherine is on that committee. I think it's just you two, not.
And Chris.
And Chris.
And Chris, sorry, Chris. They can probably answer a few questions for the other members here as well. I think what Kevin has, drafted here was for, was geared towards the town center, central business district at this point. I think the first part of this was basically to not take a step backwards with, the existing outdoor dining that's there. I think the thought is not penalizing or losing what's already existing there. Also in the second paragraph there, you can, I think what he proposed was, still quantifying the 2006 baseline that was established at that point to go off of. With that being the baseline, the thought is not to step back from that, but kind of move forward if there's a way to gain outdoor seating. And I can kind of go through what he's proposed in the outdoor dining, that new section there at the bottom of page 1. Still being quantified by the number of seats / stools. All outdoor dining still must meet ADA accessibility requirements and NC building code. Ingress, egress pass must meet the building code. I think the big proposal also was to look at the number of indoor seating and outdoor seating combined together. And basically that's still limited by, the accumulation of both of those still limited by the fixture count, existing fixture count that's there per NC building code as well. Number 5, looking at requiring barriers. What we mean by barriers is some type of protection from vehicular traffic. I think that the thoughts of that is to have protection, safety protection, and also have the requirement for bollards, mainly for the safety, have the requirement for some type of fencing for I guess smaller children, people actually being able to go out into a vehicular area. Those requirements would have to be compatible with the principal building that's on site. We would have to work with them to make sure that's accomplished. No outdoor dining within designated parking lots is being proposed. And any required landscaping buffers that's existing there or required per ordinance, they cannot be removed to create the outdoor dining within those areas. Total number of outdoor dining seats is limited by the required parking standards in Article 20. And the subcommittee may help me with this one. If you look at 8.20 there, the restaurant requirement, it got changed from 6 spaces to 12 spaces. No spaces required for 8 seats or less is proposed. If more than 40 outdoor seats, then the rate is 1 space per 8 seats. That was basically in half. Then there's, so we can discuss the other section there below relating to the tents or any enclosures outside of the restaurant area. Any discussion or, I guess, thoughts on the first part of the outdoor dining section here? And subcommittee can chime in if they need to clarify any of the thoughts there.
Can I ask for clarification on this hold harmless provision that was recommended? The last sentence says some restaurants might gain some outdoor seats through these new changes, but no restaurants would lose seats. I'm assuming that's based on the 2006 number, because it's.
Kevin has a base number for every restaurant.
I just think it's misleading to put this out saying you're not going to lose any when from 2006 most restaurants have probably added seats, and to put that in there, it's making it seem like you're not taking anything away, but we are. Or that's the intent of what this proposal is.
I think the intent is to not penalize someone and lose from the 2006 baseline. If there's extra seating past that, based on relaxing the restrictions in the meantime, those would have to go back to the 2006 baseline.
I just wanted to get clarified on what y'all intended on that, so.
And aren't there some additional restaurants that have actually subsequent to 2006 created permanent outdoor seating as well? Like, so they would
Right.
confirm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the restaurants, they've got the option to, apply for a permit and provide it if ordinance allows. And then some have.
So may I ask a question? It's, just for disclosure, I missed the last subcommittee meeting, this discussed that. Last month, this group, we had public input, which is great. One of the discussion points from Ms. Brinker was about this concept of during certain weather times when it's a nice day, really all they're, if a restaurant, if all they're doing is taking a table from inside and moving it outside, there's no, from their perspective, from anyone's perspective, really, there's no change, right? I mean, the table was here, it's there, there's no new table, right? I don't know that needs to be cut, but just from my question is that a code issue or just an enforcement issue where you'd say, look, you have amount of permitted seating inside, which is based on space, generally, let's say you have 100 seats inside, just as a round number. And the weather's nice, so half of those can move outside. Is that just an enforcement issue to say, look, there's no change and therefore everything's fine? Or is something else required?
I think it is an enforcement issue. I mean, it will still be based on the number that's set for, per the building code, based on the fixtures that's existing there. So, I think you're probably looking for an enforcement issue. If they are moving them outside, and that's an option to keep the indoor, outdoor the same, they would still have to meet the other requirements that's listed here in that section. In a properly permitted designated area.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, what you just said, meet the requirements, not the parking requirement, but the safety, the ADA, the fire access, and the safety building permit kind of issue, not the parking issue.
Right.
And the building permit is basically 75 people per fixture,
I believe so, yes.
So that's, I guess, I wonder if some would be able to simply add a bathroom to add additional outdoor seating.
Sure. I mean, that could be explored. You know, based on the existing makeup of the building, if they could or not.
Can I also ask this, and this may be a question for you, or maybe the subcommittee already addressed this, but were there any negative events that happened in the past 2 years when these were relaxed as far as allowing restaurants to add outdoor seating to compensate for increased traffic or less tables inside? Was there any discussion of whether there was any violations of any kind?
If there were any, they were not discussed at the subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
I don't know if Kevin had any direct complaints or, I mean, not that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously, all the requirements were relaxed during that time, so we wouldn't really have a lot.
My concern is going back to obviously the pre-existing requirements and hindering further the ability for our restaurants to serve people in this town. And to David Barker's point in the open forum, that's what people want to come to Blowing Rock for, not to eat, but for the experience of eating somewhere and enjoying everything else in Blowing Rock. So I have a hard time getting past the potential negative effect of implementing these changes when there really wasn't anything in the past 2 years that was drawn upon as a negative effect of these easements of restrictions, I guess. I don't know if I put that so eloquently, I'm sorry.
So, just so I understand, you're saying there's not a parking, your perception is there's not a parking problem?
No.
That's why I want to be real clear.
No, it's not a parking issue. I'm talking about the ability to put outdoor seating and having a fee on a table outside when there's room for a table outside. Preventing somebody or putting a financial burden on somebody in the amount of $15,000 for a table to accommodate more people, to allow more people to have a good experience in Blowing Rock, to where they don't get turned away at the door because there's a 2-hour wait. That already happens, and anything we put back into place is going to make that problem worse. So I have a hard time seeing this not have a negative effect on some if not all restaurants in this town. So that's kind of my point of view of this. But
Would one option be a hold harmless for current conditions?
Sam Glover and I talked about that briefly this morning, and I think that some consideration. I'm not. My opinion is obviously just one opinion, and I want the majority to have their majority opinion, but I think there needs to be some consideration for expansion of this hold harmless provision to some extent. I'm not suggesting fully. I just think there needs to be some consideration for that. But no, I do think there's a parking issue in this town. There has been since I was born. So,
Can we take a few minutes and get some comments while we're discussing?
Do we have to swear in? Do we do that?
No.
So I'm Emily Brinker. I'm one of the owners of Community What?
If you can, so.
Yeah. People can hear you.
Okay, I'm Emily Brinker. I'm one of the co-owners of Speckled Trout, and we worked really hard
through council, when council kind of said, hey, you've had this free reign basically during COVID to seat outdoors. There's been no problems, but we're taking it away. We're like, whoa, hold up. So we went through council and we asked them to just continue to temporarily suspend that so that we could thoughtfully think out what outdoor dining looks like and what it's tied to. I have to say, continuing to tie outdoor dining to a 2006 parking requirement, even if you're changing the number of parking spaces per table, just continuing to tie something to 2006 parameters without giving more thoughtful consideration to what does our town look like, what does our traffic pattern look like. We've got a lot of walkers, we've got a lot of hotels, we've got a lot of B&Bs, we have a lot of people traveling about. Jeff from Blowing Rock Ale House mentioned how he'll have folks that park at 11 o'clock and then they eat and they'll come back at 5 o'clock. So he's given up a parking space all day to a guest that's traveling our whole town. So it's a bigger thing that we're asking y'all to address, which is why I think it takes more time and more public comment, especially because we have 6 or 7 restaurants that weathered the storm through COVID. Like, we could give some really thoughtful insight into outdoor dining. But we can't make more parking spots, and we can't pay $15,000 a table, or 10, or 5. Like, we can't create more parking, but we can serve our guests, we can serve our community, we can serve our locals, and it's outdoors, because that's why they're here. That's where they want to be. That's the 2006 connection. My other thing is outdoor dining. I think we need to subdivide that into dining and sitting and having a drink while you're waiting. Because our bar stools that line the rail, your bar stools that line the rail, Hellbender's bar stools, no one's eating there. We don't have the capacity to feed that many people. But they have somewhere that they can sit and they get to look at the town and they get to drink and their kids play and they're outside. We can't make our inside restaurant any bigger, so we got to put them somewhere. But counting our stools that line the rail as dining just really throws our numbers where it's just not doable. Counting those if you're tying it to parking just really throws it over for us. I guess you guys are going to want to speak too. So, can I answer any questions?
I guess, so, just to understand the last comment about stools versus tables, which I understood everything you said, but, so in your case, you don't think you have patrons who have come just to have a drink and then leave?
Oh, we do, yes.
Okay, because I know when Mr. Walker spoke last month, his thing was we have people that travel to the high country just to have drinks there.
Yes.
Right, so a little bit maybe different situation, so I understand the waiting. The
Okay,
situation
yes,
you
they
described,
are
people-
partaking at the rail, but they're not, it's not dining in the sense of ordering food and waiting on it. But yes, people come just for drinks.
Thank you.
So to clarify, do the stools count as
They do. in
just
this
like a
data.
table, just like a four top does? Each stool at the rail?
Yes, if you have
Right.
Okay,
4 stools, it counts, it would be the equivalent to the
four
4
top, okay.
Did you have,
No, I don't wanna.
okay.
Do you want to come to the podium, Jeff?
Yeah, but whenever. I guess, I'm not so sure dining is technically defined anywhere. I think it's a small d, and I could be wrong. But I think it is a subjective interpretation. And again, I don't know, but I think when I actually did read many years ago, not in the last 6 years, but in the first couple, I'm pretty sure it's a small d, undefined. And I personally, being in the business now for, 9 years, dining is very different in our business than having a drink or a glass of wine. All the way around, from the service aspect to the patron. It's a different experience.
You talked about not doing dining in their parking per se, but I'm thinking about El Rincon, you know, they have their area that was their parking lot that they've used as their outdoor dining. She doesn't have another option. I think she still has enough parking spaces if she uses that area, but not that like we're a town that's gonna go around and give each and every restaurant what they want, but I think we're a small enough town that we can base decisions right now on what our existing restaurants look like. You know, not giving everybody what they want, but just thinking about it and how a blanket rule affects the actual people that it affects.
Do we have those numbers of what's going on now? Okay.
Yeah, and the 2006, I mean, it's just not arbitrary numbers. Those are pulled off previous conditional use permits, special use permits that was approved at the time, and they were approved for a rightful number that made sense for the project. So, you know, those numbers are tied to actual permits.
Yeah, it just does it still make sense in our climate, in our environment? Like, is that still something that we're trying to tie to? Like, I don't.
We didn't even own the building in 2000.
And since then, you've got the special use permits, so you've increased yours by permit.
Yeah, it's super fun to get those. Yeah.
I guess to the question though, what about what I call in the place that she's using for her
Well,
outdoor?
she's fortunate that she does have more parking there that probably, I think we took a look at it, she probably has adequate for what the use is there. You know, I think there's probably some discussions with her of possibly allowing that because eventually I think there's talk of a sidewalk going there, same situation as these guys, that we don't want folks backing out into the parking lot. She would have to shift her handicap somewhere, but she's got adequate room to do that. I don't think what's proposed is by means or not letting no one explore being able to do this outside. It's just a matter of this is more of the safety issue part of it and requiring those safety aspects of it and making sure that's done. I think it comes down, do you have the space or do you not have the space?
That's what it comes down to. Do you have the space or not? Can
And
you
then,
serve and
as
seat or
far as
not?
indoor outdoor seating goes, no matter, I mean, we can only serve, and I don't speak for every restaurant in Little Rock, we have very small kitchens that can only produce so much food. That is our limitation. Like, we can't serve more people in a day than we already do. And so whether people sit inside or outside has no effect on how many we can serve. And so it doesn't seem like there should be, that's where I just trip over this over and over again. It's like, how does outdoor dining affect parking whatsoever? It's like,
And that's my position too. See where I normally climb up, so we'll see what happens. But thank you all for considering, once again, the town of Blowing Rock parking issue. You know, as one of the 6, I guess, there's probably more in general, but maybe 6 downtown. Yeah. It's from my vantage point, which I realize is not everyone's vantage point, but from my specific vantage point, I feel that the 6, and we could even say remaining restaurants provide a very important role as proprietors to the Blowing Rock community, as well as the out-of-town visitors, for which I think we all know the town of Blowing Rock prospers, and we want to provide a good experience for them. And I just get hung up in the day-to-day. If come by our host stand, and it'll just take an hour. We open at 11:30, and by 12:30, you'll see that we're on wait. And the common question is, can we sit outside, and why don't you have more tables? And yes, we do have a beer brand that's in 1,000 accounts across the state, so that helps with the awareness for not just our business, but for the town of Blowing Rock also, and for the High Country. They don't. Our patrons not just come to our place for lunch. They come to our place maybe for lunch or
a late lunch, and stroll Main Street, and maybe go to the park or whatever, and go to the museum or whatever they do. We have 9 parking spaces, and that's when we don't put tables in one of them, because we need to. But they're not dining tables. They are what we call in our industry kind of, outdoor. You probably all have been to breweries, I'm guessing, or maybe you haven't, I don't know. But when you do, you go and enjoy their beers and sit outside for 45 minutes or an hour. And so I think, and I think that's true with Speckled Trout too. They have a very strong craft beer focus, and I think that's brought a new demographic to the town of Blowing Rock, I think in a very good way. I think the successful proprietorships in the future will have similar business models. I think that's all very positive. But it's really unfair, I think, for the 2006. It's a different town now, 18 years later. And the 4-lane highways in both directions that have been put in since, up the mountain, make Blowing Rock so much more accessible to people from the Winston-Salem, Charlotte, Triangle Triad, and as well as Charlotte. That's all pretty much since '06. And I feel like we're providing the dining experience, or the brewery experience, or whatever you want to call it, that everybody seems to want to have in Blowing Rock. But then we've got nine parking spaces, and we're being hamstrung by some sort of algebra tying the number of seats to how many spaces we have. We cannot provide $15,000 for 4 seats. That's just not, you couldn't do the math on those numbers. I mean, those tables, as soon as it rains, people don't sit outside. It's seasonal. There's no return on investment for the business on that number. I don't even know where that number came from. I would, if I were to, from my perspective again, which is my own perspective, I would encourage the planning board to look at the first few things on the list there. I think the typical building code issues. I think anything from setbacks to ingress, egress, and ADA and those types of things. I think that makes sense. But to mechanically put the burden of the town of Blowing Rock's parking problem on the 6 restaurants, I think is a big upside down initiative. And I think it's really just tied to the way things were thought about in the past, 18 years ago. But we have a different situation today. So I would encourage the board to rethink that one aspect, but I think the others are very important. I think the access is important. I think the other typical building code type parameters are important. The surfaces, that kind of thing. And I think you'll find that if we do have a little bit of assurance that the town has a vision for what that can look like aesthetically, functionally, or then you'll see us making investments in those areas where it'll be a safer environment, it'll be a more aesthetic environment. All of the things that the planning board probably really tries to accomplish, I think will be accomplished with more of a longer-term vision and in a way that supports our hospitality industry. There's not 26, there's 6, right? So that's I guess that's my point of view on it. And I know that if we do tie the parking to dining, and however dining is, I know how I interpret dining, and that's full service. Doesn't have to have a white tablecloth, but it's probably full service. It's not a pint of beer or a glass of wine sitting down on a stool somewhere. And if the town, if things are written in that way, I didn't see it. Maybe I haven't read as much as I should have on that, but I don't think it's a defined term. So you kind of have to go back to Webster's if it's not. But I would just, in our situation, we would need to get out of the in business. So that means our in rooms go away, and we would reclaim, I guess, 5 spaces. But then we're no longer in the in business. So, and and I'm prepared to make that decision in an instant if the ordinances, even with the 8 seats, depending on how it's interpreted. So thank you very much. It is a difficult issue. I mean, parking is, I think we all know it's a challenge. Thank you.
Do you mind if I talk? I'll try to say something. I am going to be a little bit repetitive. My name is Eric Brinker. I am with the Speckled Trout. We also own the parking lot next to the Speckled Trout, and we're renovating the building that used to be the Hartley's Interiors building. And so we're going to be dealing with parking for a while. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is we saw 2 years of really good times for businesses, considering how decimated the economy became from COVID. And I was at the council meeting where it was point blank asked, were there any detrimental effects from the last 2 years? And Kevin's response was no. And what the council decided to do was challenge a subcommittee and then this committee with making a change in the interim, suspending the ordinance so that people could continue to operate, so that we could all hire for season. We're in season now. And what I think we're missing here, if we just jump to a vote, if you guys jump to a vote to take this today, and then this is what the council sees, then I think we've missed a real opportunity to make a impactful change for the future. I think we'll be right back here. I can tell you I'll be right back here because I'm going to fight it till the end, because this is archaic. These type of zoning laws were made a long time ago, and they don't apply anymore. I mean, in 2006, $15,000 would have bought you a parking spot. I'm a contractor and builder also. I used to build parking decks, and we could do a concrete parking deck for $15,000 a spot in 2006. You can't do that anymore. So the math, we'd have to figure something else out as far as building parking or how that all works out. But I mean, I don't think it gets made in a snap decision. And again, I go back to the point I tried to make earlier. The outdoor dining should not be tied to parking. It has no relevance. It's for our businesses, we can only serve so many guests. So if our kitchen can only pump out 50 tables an hour, then, and I'm throwing a number out there, 50 tables isn't the number, then it doesn't matter where those tables are, inside, outside, on the roof. I mean, only a certain finite number can come out of that kitchen. And I think people would eat regardless of where they parked. You made the point several times, but you can sit at our restaurant and watch. We don't enforce it. People will park there, go to Melon Mushroom, they can go shop at the Boxwood or wherever. They spend the day in town. It happens to all of us. But it's just part of Bowling Rock. Yeah, I've been coming here since I was a little kid. And we always had to find a place to park. It's been a problem since as long as I've been alive, 43 years. And you figure out a place to park and you walk the town and you get the experience. It shouldn't be the burden of the restaurants to carry that burden. Thank you.
This may be a question for staff, but in the parking section, under flexibility in administration of the ordinance, there's a little say, it's 20.4.1. Without limiting the generality of the foregoing, the permit issuing authority, which you guys, may allow deviations from the parking requirements when it finds that, and in one of those bullets, a business that is primarily oriented toward walk-in traffic or trade. So does that help any of these or hurt, or how do you, or does that apply in this case?
Well, the permit issuing authority could be staff, could be council.
Mhm.
Depends on whether it's-
Who's issuing the permit? Yeah.
Or if it's a zoning permit.
So that's really talking about special use permits or the zoning permits when they're initially issued, more so than enforcement.
It's to recognize that not every parking calculation fits the right situation. And that if they provide a flexibility or a waiver, let's say the council did, it also asks that if it feels like the classification or the amount of parking that's required for that use classification is in error or should not be, it says it shall initiate a request for an amendment to the table. That's in 20.4.3. So this section is specific to a particular use, but I wouldn't want to, hey, let's just go to the flexibility and just start
Mhm.
trying to determine how much parking each restaurant might need. Because then you'll be, well, you treated us unfairly. We should have this, and the next guy's this. So you go to a standard. If the standard needs to be amended, that's the time to do that. I'm sorry I was late. I had graduation cap and stuff, and I started at 4. Thought I did not. But anyway, in the draft, the latest draft that I provided you, my attempt was to give additional flexibility for the outdoor parking, and I think maybe I'll already covered that. Where we looked at it, instead of one for every 6 outside seats, 1 parking space. Then we went 1 to 12 to try to split the difference and provide a little bit of flexibility. And then no spaces if you just have eight seats or less. And then the other part is already there. If you have more than 40, then that rate is 1 per 8 and not 1 per 4. So we got to work with the numbers a little bit there. Trying to recognize this flexibility section, saying, hey, this is the time where we're thinking we ought to look at flexibility.
Kevin, how does that calculation work on the, if more than 40? Does that mean every seat over 40, or if more than 40, then the calculation, instead of being 1 per 12, is now 1 per 8?
It would be for those over 40. So you have 1 to 12 up to 40, and then beyond that, it'd be a pro rate.
What's the logic behind that?
At some point, there's a tipping point. I mean, if you want 95 seats out there, something's got to give. Those, you know, I understand where y'all are coming from. I think I probably heard y'all's position. Didn't hear it tonight, but I think I've got a good idea. But if you just throw them out completely, parking requirements, even from the outdoor dining, council can do that. Planning board could recommend to do that. The subcommittee was not there. The subcommittee was kind of split, and so we think you need to keep parking part of the code the way it is, but let's look at it, and we can make some changes to it. So that's what I did in the draft. But I don't know that we can just totally throw it out. And so the logic is, not everybody that shows up to eat in or outdoors walks here. somebody brings a car into this town, and they're having to find a place. So we're trying to balance, how far can we go to say, we encourage outdoor dining, we want you to do it. There's other parameters that I think have been identified too. Do you have fixtures? Do you have enough toilets to serve the people that you're serving in the restaurant? And I'll ask the question right now, I'm not shy about it. Do y'all have enough to serve?
I think we do, because we've never had anybody say, oh, man.
Right, I don't know.
We don't put, when we start having issues, we don't put more tables out. So, because it doesn't reflect on the business well, so, but it's a lot more than what we're rated for on the parking. So it's,
Say that again,
there is,
I didn't understand.
well, when we bump into the, let's just say the limitations on our bathrooms, okay?
Is it 1%
We-
or not, just for clarification?
We pull tables back. So we don't add so many tables that we're gonna put ourselves in a position where our patrons have a bad experience.
Have y'all ever added porta johns to support the amount of tables y'all have down
Yes.
there? Okay. If y'all have done that, then that is an indication that you don't have enough fixtures.
We did that during COVID.
Okay.
People want to be outside.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you should.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying that.
And we want to add more bathrooms, but we can't justify it because we're hamstrung with parking regulations.
Yeah. So all the different regulations have a limiting factor on what you're going to do. And we're trying to strike a balance as a planning board on what that should be, what it should be like, and to be as fair as we can be.
Sure. No, it's, the town and its leadership is wonderful, so I don't think any of us are here to fault any of that. I think it's a review of an 18-year-old, 16-year-old code in light of the fact that you've got 6 restaurants downtown. And there is no more, they're not making any new property and blowing them, especially downtown. And so I think as proprietors, we're on the other side of the equation trying to provide a great experience for the cast of however many people that have found parking. Somehow they park, but they make it to our front door and they get in line for 2 hours, and we can't effectively answer the question why we don't have more seating and why we can't accommodate more guests. And so when we do say it's a town requirement, they're like, that's the, well, I won't say what it is. I know that's being recorded.
Your point is they've already parked.
They've already
Right.
parked, exactly, they
They've
parked,
already parked.
and we provide a service to the rest of the town, if I can say that, for hospitality. Eating and general experience, the whole experience. People come here for a weekend or a week or an afternoon. And Kevin, before you were here, I said something that was a little provocative. I suggested that there be no tie to parking with outdoor seating, because it is very seasonal. It is very weather dependent. Okay? We don't, when it's raining, nobody wants to sit outside. In February, nobody wants to sit outside. But in those peak times, we need, as businesses, to be able to accommodate those peaks, because we have 6 restaurants. And even if we do need to resort to porta johns in the worst case scenario, that's how bad it is, because there's such an influx of people that don't understand why all the restaurants are on 2-hour waits. And but I do agree wholeheartedly that the rest of the planning board, typical egress and ADA and those types of issues are very important. I think those things are, but as long as the setbacks are there and there's enough landscaping and all that, I don't see how it can be really the parking. Why it ought to be the parking
thing. I know there has to be some parameters on that, but I don't think the right place is to put it on variable outdoor seating that's very weather and seasonally dependent.
Kevin, the
You
number
all
of
mentioned
people,
it, go ahead.
the number of people that we sat outside, over the last 2 years, like they found somewhere to park. I mean, it didn't slow them down. The fact that they had to park in Tanger and walk or whatever, I mean,
That ain't doing
where are they parking?
that. I bet if you asked them, they said it was I bet they didn't say it was easy, especially on a Thursday.
Yeah, but I guess my point is putting less tables in our outdoor patio isn't gonna stop them from coming. It's not gonna reduce the amount of traffic.
Y'all were talking about 6 restaurants,
Yes, I wrote down to
12.
Yeah, I don't know how many there are.
Elmer Cone House, Hellbender, Ale House, Time Tavern, Story Street.
El Rincon.
Mellow.
El Rincon.
Mellow.
Speckled Trout, Mellow Mushroom.
They're so far away from me, I just remember them.
Now, here we go.
I'm ready to go.
El Rincon,
Yep.
Speckled Trout, Mellow Mushroom, Hellbender, Famous Toaster.
But they're not, okay, I'm not counting that. I
That's
counted our
acceptable.
street, I counted Main Street.
Well, that's not them.
I'll put them on.
Sixpence, the place that was in that Kojay's was. what's the name of that?
Sixpence
Cafe Outlet, Sixpence, they were closed for so long. Just didn't count. They were
Are they
open
open
last
now?
week. They were open last week.
They are.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah,
it's a
they were
restaurant
last week or
downtown,
something.
Town Tavern, Story Street Grill.
Village Cafe.
What's the Village Cafe's 10?
Yes, so.
That's 11.
Maybe the rest of
Long
the
Rock
people
Ale
out here
House.
just can afford the 15K. It's fine.
It's 12.
Just want to make sure we got it. on.
So,
Wait,
there's
so
also Village Cafe, but they're super, she's seasonal and she's selling, so I also didn't put that.
I didn't mention
I didn't count
It's on
Mellow
there.
Mushroom because somehow I forgot them. And I didn't count Cafe Relics, I forgot them. Famous Toastery I didn't include just because they're so far off the beaten path that it's,
Well, they're
it's,
not that far, they're.
it's all our church parking. They don't have anything to
That's
worry about.
very, very welcome. I mean, they're downtown.
They're past you,
I mean,
yeah.
to Kevin's point, they're, so the number, you're right, Kevin, the number is more than 6.
So you have 9 spaces at the brewery? Under the new rules, at 1 for every 12, that's 108 seats, right?
Well, we have 5 in rooms, so.
Oh, I know, sorry.
Right.
Right, there's the in rooms that are accounted for that part.
Right.
There's also
So how many go to the-
The indoor square
Right.
foot is devoted to the restaurant too, for seating. That's
Right.
1 per square.
75.
Right.
So how many parking spaces are left for the brewery?
No, it's, indoors, it's 1 for 250 gross square footage, 1 parking space. So it's all cumulative, but, I'm not trying to be adversarial. I think it's not a bad idea either to not worry about outdoor dining related to parking. But I don't.
Kick us to the curb.
Just kind
Because we have a practical situation where the outdoor dining, how many months a year is it, maybe 6? And it's when the weather's nice, and when the weather's nice, lots of people come to Blowing Rock, both from in the high country and also off mountain. And the number's not 6, maybe it's 9 or 12.
I have 11, not counting
So-
Sixpence.
I'm not, and some of them don't have any parking, I think.
Right.
There's a couple that don't have any. And then there are some that are near lots of parking, like Famous Toaster. And so we're kind of in the middle of all that. All I can say is that when people come to our place and they get there at 11:30 and they find a parking space, they typically don't leave until 4:30, or 5. And time to get back to wherever they're going for the
And sometimes they ask.
the Blowing Rock's a walking town. That's what's really changed over, I'm sure it always was a certain walking town, but now we get a lot of daytime travelers, and that's because of the 4 lanes and the new highways. It's much more accessible. And I'm here to say, they find a place to park, and then they walk the town, and they show up at one of our establishments for taking. And that's a good thing. So
goes back, or if it's the overall board, but to think of outdoor dining as a year-round impact is probably not the way to think about it. Think about it as a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing, and just like our in-rooms, you know, if we get one in-room per spot, or vice versa, one spot per in-room, 5 in-rooms, that's where we have 9, you know, we have 4. To answer your question, the answer is 4.
4, okay.
And so, as I said, if this were enforced, the first thing I would do is get out of the in-business, because we would rather have those spots for tables. Okay, so but then we don't have overnight guests anymore. So that would be a detriment. That would not be a great outcome for the town. So it's a difficult issue, but I just think outdoor dining is a different kind of phenomenon than the other impacts that we deal with respect to parking. It's very weather dependent, seasonally dependent.
But it's parking, like, everybody agrees it's a parking problem, whether they're eating with us or trying to bring kids to school or drop off a tax payment, like, parking is just a problem. It's not just for the people that are eating outside. So we should solve our parking problem separately.
But setbacks, fire, and we want to be able to justify building more bathrooms. we really do. I think the whole town needs more bathrooms. So if we could justify that by having some clarity on this issue, that would be helpful.
Kevin, what has the parking fund, and I apologize for not knowing this, but what has it been used for in the past?
It can, maintenance, paving, restriping, paying down debt.
So what I've heard from every person that's spoken is that they have a decision to make. Assuming these old rules come back into play, they're either going to have to pay that fine or fee, in order to keep what they already have. So it's not a there's no return on that money. It's just gone. Or they eliminate that, creating less of a positive experience for people coming to Blowing Rock, and we lose more commerce in this town because of that. So it seems to me that without change, we as a board are almost limiting the growth of these businesses in this town. And it would take a lot to convince me otherwise. Just from a standpoint of, we haven't shown any of these business owners what we're doing with this parking fund. So you're asking people to put in a huge amount of money. It's not helping the parking problem, as you alluded to earlier. Our parking, we have a problem, and paving and restriping doesn't help the parking problem. So you're still dealing with the same issues, but putting a financial burden that has no return on restaurants. And I'm a numbers guy, so that's what I think about. And I know that governmental accounting is well above my head, and so I'm not even going to try to understand it or relay that information, but the uses of that money, I think people have the interpretation that that is being used to put parking in this town. And you can have the money to put parking in the town, but you still need the land to put parking on. And that is obviously ongoing, and the town is trying to fix those issues by acquiring more land and putting parking on, and those ideas obviously are in a different conversation. But all the things that we've heard, like you putting a permanent awning on the front, you all having permanent outdoor seating that is there permanently to where you can seat people all the time, where people can just go have a drink. David Barker at the market having somewhere where people can go that's big enough to house people if it rains. All the people in the park could probably fit under a huge awning under there. And I've seen this town lose ground to other surrounding towns that have done a lot better job because they haven't had the parking issues that we've had. And so, again, I come from a numbers background and obviously work with a lot of local businesses. And so I don't see a benefit for them to pay this money. And so then you're not accomplishing anything because they're not paying the money. So I just wanted to voice that because it just, from a number standpoint, it just doesn't make sense for the owners of businesses.
Let's say something, Sam, just so we know.
Yep.
About the parking fund. The majority of all money that's ever been paid to the parking fund was paid prior to the parking decks being built.
And that's the debt on that's paying down on that. Understood.
Yeah. The parking fund was established in '05, and the majority of the money came in the next couple of years with the development of the Hannah Building. You had Gaines Kiker, Bob Dyer paid some related to Jeff's.
I just think
But
without,
and then it was, that money had been going mostly to debt. I'm checking on.
and I'm not suggesting, I guess I'm just formulating some ideas is in that if we can come up with a legitimate plan for this money to show these business owners that you invest in this parking fund, we're gonna give you tangible spots. We're gonna put a parking lot on this newly acquired piece of property, and it's going to help the parking issue in this town. I think that will go a long way to justifying that fee. So again, I'm a little biased because I work with a lot of businesses in this town, and you can tell by my stances, but I just wanted to relay that so that the subcommittee and the rest of you all can take that in consideration.
Any other comments? Hearing that, would you consider a motion to ask the subcommittee to go back and reconsider comments and come back next month?
I would put that motion forward, yes.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Chris? All right. Thank you for your work, and look forward to hearing what you have to say after that next month. And thank you guys for your comment.
Thank you.
And
Thank y'all, appreciate you listening.
we would love to hear, or I would, what the standard would be to make you legal today. And what that difference would be from what we've got and what you would recommend individually. I don't know whether
If you
you've
have
done
any
any
specific
calculations.
ideas for the subcommittee, is what he's saying, to
Have
consider.
you done any
limiting-
parking calculations?
We did.
Okay.
We're legal. This doesn't apply to us.
Oh.
I think that I hear enough about rules that don't make sense to speak up when it doesn't make sense. And I don't think tying outdoor parking to outdoor dining makes any sense at all.
It makes zero sense.
But
Makes some.
we're legal.
At some point it makes sense.
At some point it makes sense, 100%. It just doesn't, it's just not where we're going. It's not helping us get anywhere.
Going back to, good thing we had the rules prior to '06. Y'all wouldn't have any. So back then, it was one parking space for 100 square feet of building, which is, that's what it is out on 321. And we changed it to, increase the opportunity, recognizing, hey, everybody loves to be outside. And so we changed that to one for 250 downtown, and then the parking. It was one for every 4 seats back then, and then we softened it up a little bit, 1 for 6, and then, gave everybody, hey, you can have a table.
Kevin, what about like Sixpence and Story Street? Like, they don't have parking lots. Do they pay into the fund?
They both have. Sixpence owns that whole back. Everything behind 6 minutes they own. But they tore down Sonny's,
Right.
and then what Sonny's was allotted and had, they put their outdoor dining out there.
Okay. Okay.
They've got 9 spaces under the deck in the parking lot behind Storage Street.
So,
There's parking underneath
Under that.
Storage Street and in the back parking lot.
okay.
Maybe you've been back here. Anyway.
I look like there's on signs saying do not park here, do not park here.
The subcommittee
That's
had that
probably-
conversation.
Across
Those
the
signs
street.
scare me. I'm like,
That's
I'm
across
not
the
park
street
there.
at, Southmore.
I park it there.
That's Carrie's. Anyway,
And Jeff even had a guy, one time that parked at Food Line and walked to work every day. Little girls at the bar would tell me one day.
Our staff parks usually in the parking deck, or at the Silver Wolf. On weekends.
Yeah, I don't know, your question
How many
was,
spots do you need? Or like, what is that ratio to be to make it legal?
like, is legal?
Right, like to see, to have all your outside seats.
I'm still confused by how you define that. I mean, I know we think about dining as a loose concept, but I think, and I know how it could be interpreted, but I have a hard time, and no, just speaking freely here, Kevin, but I don't know how dining is actually defined, and so it's hard to answer the question, because I
Well,
don't.
seats,
Just seats, not dining.
yeah,
Don't-
seats are tied to toilets, so dining is
Yeah.
irrelevant. It's seats to toilets and seats to parking.
So how many seats inside and outside do you have currently?
It's interesting, I wish your numbers guy, I wish I knew the answer in numbers, but.
I can't do it in my head, but I need my
I
calculator.
don't know for next meeting, I'll have that. Whatever answer I give you would probably be the wrong answer, because we kind of put them out as we need them, we don't have a bunch of empty seats. It just doesn't look good for a business to do that, so we accommodate demand as the demand's there, but we don't accommodate so much that we run into other problems like bathroom problems. So, because that's not in our best interest, so there's a limiting factor there. I would take a wild guess and say 40 outdoor seats is kind of on a busy Saturday with some standing room. People luckily to drink beer at our brewery, they don't need to be sitting in a seat, right? And so, so they can stand it and still
You can
drink.
stand and drink.
But that dining to me implies full service, just so as Kevin came in after I said that I personally am confused about what that means. I'm not wanting it to mean standing around drinking a pint of our beer that we brew on site. I don't think it is. And I also don't think it's sitting with a dog on a leash, drinking a pint of beer for 15 minutes. And now the town might disagree with me on that. But-
So, by definition, outdoor dining is outdoor dining facilities that are associated with and in the immediate vicinity of a restaurant, cafe, or other permitted establishment that serves food or drinks for on-site consumption. Now, that's the definition, not how we calculate or how we would arrive at a number. Outdoor dining is quantified by the number of seats or stools, places to sit down and have a meal or a drink. If you have none of those, and there are people out there just getting a drink, setting them on a platform, it's not, we don't quantify that. Just like if y'all had people just hang out throwing cornhole. Now, there is a calculation, building code based on standing room only.
Yes.
And sit down, I think it's 5 square feet per person, or, anyway, there's a building code calculation related to fixtures and occupancy. That, we can get into that in a lot of detail, but when we're trying to count how many you can have, we're going to a number that says, this is how many seats or stools you can have, places to sit. As an example, 8-foot picnic table seats 8 people, 6-foot seats 6. I guess a normal proportion.
So,
That could be.
is that the existing definition for dining that goes way
No,
back?
this is all new stuff.
But was there a definition of dining before? So it was a small d, not defined before. In other words, there wasn't a definition of what a dining seat technically meant in the old regulation.
No.
Yeah, because I looked for, I spent a good 3 hours looking for one afternoon. And I couldn't find anything, and so it was, and it was a small D, and we all know what I meant by small D, just using the term, but when I looked it up in Webster's, it was implied full service, maybe fine dining, okay? And I think the way Blowing Rock has evolved over the past 16 years or so is that we have a lot more people with casual, there's a lot less white tablecloth now than I think maybe there's the same amount of white tablecloth, but there's also this new thing that's happening, which I think is good for the town. It brings lots of, a broader client, broader demographic, let's just say, age groups, that kind of thing. And so, and I think that's where we're seeing the need for our tables, for our outdoor seats. But a lot of that, I don't know if it would be technically defined as dining. I'm really not trying to get the definition rewritten to prevent us from having a person with a dog on a leash enjoying a pint of beer, calling that dining. Because I don't think it is. I think dining is an hour and a half, hour 45. And that's more of a setting with, 2 to 6 people or 2 to 8 people, I'd say, in general, different kind of impact. But nevertheless, I think that the outdoor tables, I really think that we would, the town would benefit from it. With respect to outdoor seating, I think it needs to fall within setbacks, all the things that the building inspectors look at. But to tie it to a parking space almost seems like for lack of a better expression, like a back office currency. When all we're trying to do as businesses is accommodate the hundreds or thousands of visitors that Blowing Rock gets, and then there's X number of restaurants that do that. Whatever the numbers, not 6, it's 11, I guess. Thank you, Kevin. But it's still a finite number, and we still are on long waits, and our visitors still don't understand why we don't have more outdoor seating. They don't. So, and we'll never be able to explain that to them as long as they see space out there for seating, for tables.
For the subcommittee, could we send notes on counting stools separately from tables outside? Because the stools, if someone's perched in a stool, they're not staying for an hour, so the impact on restrooms, the impact on, I guess just restrooms, is gonna be less. So like if we really have to get into the nitty gritty.
I don't think you should,
You think it's fine?
I don't think you should do that. I don't think you say, well, this person's only gonna stay this. You
Right, that's
never know.
what I meant.
Next guy drinks 6 beers, they're gonna be there.
You got a bag of blood.
How their dining habits and that stuff, we're not
You're just-
regulating that.
Kevin, can I ask what you just said a little bit ago about a seat that has the ability to have food or drink, correct? Read that again.
So, I just came up with a definition, there's an online definition of
Okay.
outdoor dining. I just
But in terms of the
picked
number,
one and kind of modified it a little bit. Outdoor dining. Outdoor dining facilities that are associated with and in the immediate vicinity of a restaurant, cafe, or an establishment that serves food or drinks for on-site consumption.
so would that eliminate seating that does not serve food? Because I know there are some places that you don't serve food, correct? They just can sit out there and drink, correct?
Right.
Like there's no waiters there that come out there.
They have to go up to the bar, get a drink, and come out.
There's no service. And that, I guess that was the distinction I was looking for, but at the same time, I'm not looking for that distinction, that example to be referred to as dining, because I think it would almost have to be a new term. I'd rather not see that happen.
Well, we also have classification of restaurant or bar. Now,
What if you're both?
one of the, a myself, they do not have to serve food.
Yeah, and at least in our
Restaurant, bars, and nightclubs, with any of the above, talk about restaurants where the gross proceeds from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages are less than the gross proceeds from that sale of alcoholic beverages. Those are not allowed in downtown. That's in general business only. So we should not have a situation where their food sales and non-alcoholic sales exceed, or less than their alcohol. Should not have it in downtown. And that's an ABC, ALE situation. But from a use table, they are classified differently than a restaurant.
We were just talking about the restaurant, like our stools that line the rail, they're not for service, it's essentially an outdoor waiting area.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, you don't get food there, so would that count in the seat for parking?
Do you have folks eating at those stools?
I've tried.
The only person that eats there is Eric, because he breaks all the rules no matter what you tell him.
Well, that's a personal restriction that your restaurant has created.
That's correct.
That does not apply to everybody in town. If you have a seat, if you have a little place, yeah, that's.
But I'm saying from a parking calculation.
If it's a seat for outdoor dining in an area that would be associated with outdoor dining, it's counted and would be associated with a certain amount of parking.
I guess what I'm getting at is the dining definition of food and beverage, or only beverage. Is that outdoor dining?
The definition that I provided y'all for a draft is it serves food or drinks.
You'd have to change it to
I
and.
think the "and" is the word I'm looking for.
I agree on the end, but
Still, we don't have high parking.
Well, the motion was to move on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
committee.
Mhm.
I mean, this other information is helpful and valuable for us to consider. Back, probably beat this thing to death. The parking standard was in place because some people, based on the code we had no option. They didn't have that parking, and so the council could say, we're just not turning you down, you don't have an option, sorry. Next time. So they said, or they were just waiving on the parking. Like the Thurl building, it was approved for a restaurant on the second floor, and they had to have a ridiculous amount of parking. So they waived it all, they didn't provide any, they built the building and they moved on. Never built the restaurant, but.
It's not not uncommon in a central business
Right.
to have parking.
Right, a lot of towns,
Mhm.
don't require parking at all.
Mhm.
In central business,
Yeah, in that downtown.
Raleigh,
and not to,
And Raleigh's got parking. Well,
Yeah.
we have two.
It's real hard to park in Raleigh.
Well, and here too, people,
but there's a
people won't walk.
people there.
Y'all know what it's like, if we watch them, we still watch them over on the corner, and look down Sunset, but I don't know if I walk down there, I gotta walk up, I don't know. People are,
That's sad.
by nature, kind of lazy.
It hurt us for the first couple of years, honestly, because people would come down from
It's
our
a
side of
little
town.
bit too far.
Little bit outside of town.
But, you know, this central activity moves, I mean, it's kind of, the hotel behind you, there's gonna be a lot of activity. Sidewalk access and all those things.
Can't handle it back to the current.
Well, again, thank you for coming and
yeah.
giving your
And I
comments.
think there is more interest in this from our hospitality restaurant group than what's represented here tonight. I don't know. But I think they also think, they have to listen to me talk, and they know I do a lot of talking, so they probably.
Jeff, was like, I'm going tonight, who else is coming?
Thank you again.
No, it's just like, backwash.
All right, next on the agenda is other business, and
We need a second to that motion.
We
We
voted.
We did
It
get
passed.
last paragraph.
Thank you, guys.
Concerns or discussion on that. With the tents.
The last paragraph.
It's restricting the use of the tents.
Intense.
Any comments on it?
Is there anything we need to take back to the committee since we meet anyway? I think it's pretty straightforward.
I think that's a good rule. You know, we do have some folks that have had tents up for a long time, restaurants, and so the assumption is that has not been enforced.
It hasn't, it is.
It is being enforced. Okay.
We talked about downtown.
Not everybody's going.
Jeff's got some too.
Yes, downtowns came down. It was not up there in some winter snowstorm, I guarantee you. It would have been down.
Okay.
Because it's not designed for that kind of load. And it was down. There was a period of time when winter was down and people argued about it. It was down. But, so it's limited to 6 months in a calendar year. So he had been doing a couple of months in the spring, a couple in the fall, and then taking it down. And it was just, no one's gonna be out there either. But this rule, or this proposed rule is like, I'm not doing it anymore. Special events, like we always have, fine. If you're gonna have something beyond that, build something. Build something that is, excuse me, complementary to the building style, design, and materials that you got.
I think that's a good idea.
So a week is,
Of the calls we've had, we probably had more on the tents.
Yeah.
and the week in duration, that was the recommendation of the committee? Of these special use permits? Okay.
We did.
I'm not arguing,
I would
just
have something
clear.
out and then, let the subcommittee, and we didn't have any real issues on the tents, I don't think. There's, special events are gonna be permitted in a different way, like the antique sale is gonna have about 7 to 10 days. Chitola has it different. Or if you've got a little 10 by 10 that doesn't require a building permit, it might be for some special art form, stuff like that. Not an issue, but when it's gonna be for outdoor dining, let's do something else, do something better. Or if you have a tent that you wanna use, go through the process to get it approved for a permit type situation.
All right. Any other comments? Other business, Kevin?
No, sir. To answer, I did get a answer back from Nicole about the parking fund. She said, she believed it hit most of it for debt service. Or a cash portion of the decks. I don't know what that means, but mainly debt service.
On the deck. It's good.
We ain't got any money from it in a long time. The good, there was a few years, it was just 7,500. That was the time to make hay. I think people would pay for it. And there wasn't a need. Now, we're seeing. I think it's good that we've got good restaurants that are vibrant, that are wanting to be a service to the town.
It sounds like we'll deal with, short-term, next
Yeah.
time also.
Yeah. Not no rush.
Yeah. Didn't sound like it.
It sounds like everybody else is kind of waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Charlotte, if Charlotte's waiting, maybe we can.
That's right.
I don't know that Charlotte has the issues of short-term rentals in their neighborhoods like we do. But where they are allowed, we want to make sure we're in lockstep with these other communities.
Okay.
So we'll work with the school government. See what makes sense.
All right. Hearing no other comments, we'll adjourn next month. Thank you.
Thank you.